So my name is Viviana Muscettola. I've been a Zaha Hadid Architect for 22 years. I had the pleasure of working for Zaha and with Zaha for a very long time. The idea today is to talk about the creative process of the company, and to be fair, no matter what is the scale, whether we are looking at furniture design or intervention between the old and new, master plans or airport, there is a common thread that is the research of true innovation and creative innovation of beauty and meaningful to the location that we are working within. So this is a video that shows, no particular order, a number of completed projects of the practice. And one of the things that all of those projects have in common is that, first of all, none of them looks like the previous one, and yet they have a communality. There is always in our project the idea that the location is, and the context from both social point of view and environmental point of view, have a strong impact in the way we design our building. But there are other items that I think contribute with the creation of each one of those projects. There are for us, the research of experiences within spaces that are unique. Architecture is in motion, is dynamic, is not what you see here like one frame per time, but we experience spaces by walking, by living into it. So a lot of the research of the practice really stands in looking at the dynamism of the design and how they can then transform into actual spaces. Now, we don't need introduction, but maybe it's interesting in this slide to let you know that the majority of our staff stands in London, not the cheapest city where to set up shops, but that's where we started. And I think of all of those statistics that you see here, I like the one about the languages. 45 languages are not a small amount. We are a truly international company that embeds, a common interest in design and creation through innovation, but also really much brings together different points of view in the discussion about architecture. So that's how we started, founded by Dame Zaha Hadid. She has been a great inspiration for not only for people that have been working throughout the history of the company, but very much the world of architecture, relentless in her research on how spaces, location, people could actually live, work, and experience life in general. She passed away now, we are close to 10 years without Zaha. I had the pleasure to be her student and to help her in the design of her home, personal house. The group of people that are still in the company and new to come, they still have, in a way, an embedded DNA of how to design and how to bring forward the company. Just for clarity, we are now an EBT, so we are owned by ourselves without shares, so it's even more interesting. And that allows us to be completely free from, being dictated how to do project and which project to take in the future. We do almost everything. We are a truly multidisciplinary practice. This is only showing the typology, but we have quite an extensive expertise in creating new ways of reinventing AI. We have a sustainability group embedded in our company, all architects with different specialization, all working together. One of the things that makes us unique is the idea that throughout the design of our building, there is a shift in the way we experience different things. This is the example of the Seoul Art Center. That when it was open, it was the first year in terms of number of people coming to this museum was only second to the Louvre in Paris. And the content of this building is a bit about digital, fashion, and so on. For sure, we don't have any Mona Lisa within this building. The great success is coming from a bit of a spaceship, in this case, in an area of Seoul, South Korea. They really needed to have a new identity within this space. But we're also very carefully designing with in mind sustainability and wellness. And I'll talk about what means sustainability for us and what wellness means. It is about somehow redefine luxury. And there was a presentation about luxury, and I was thinking, okay, I'm also going to talk about luxury. Luxury for us is the luxury of experiences that we can create within the spaces that we design. Again, the idea that throughout the complexity or simplicity of our design, people can truly experience something that is different because they are in that context and in that specific location, is one of the key aspects of what we try to do in our company. We have also very carefully, and I'm going to show a couple of projects, looked at how we can work with historical building. In this case, it's a new hotel that opened just last year within a 16th century building. Some paradigms stays and are staying from right at the beginning of the company. This is one of the first build projects of Zaha Hadid Architects. It's in the Fino, it's a science museum. And the idea of using digital tools at the beginning was, as you can see, there this black and white building, was actually used for the designers to test how a completely different concept of a museum where none of the floors is actually on a flat surface. Everything is actually shifting as you move across the different experiments of the museum, could actually be tested visually within the softwares. And this is also what happened with the Maxi Museum in Rome. This, you see a painting by Zaha in the background, but you see a physical model, you see the digital version of that. So the technology, whichever technology, to be fair, used as a way of testing the ideas, used as a way of changing and optimizing what the design looks like, not only the facade panelization. And it is a tool that then evolved through time. In this particular project, the idea of having 5 stations, this is a cable car in Innsbruck, Austria. The idea to have the station, each one to start from some sort of imagine some sort of a soft and jelly form and adapt to the different terrain from the 2 stations at the top and at the bottom to the one that really have to deal with quite a different terrain throughout. Again, the digital software used as a tool to reiterate the idea. Still, you find the form that better adapts to the terrain in this case. And then more, let's say, more recent, is still, I think, 7 or 8 years ago. This is a museum for Messner in the Italian Alps. The idea here was to create a journey from the top of the mountain to 3 different spaces. It's an educational small museum about the life on the mountain. And each one of those 3 cones is actually perfectly framing the 3 main group of mountains within the location. Again, the idea of movement, again, the idea of using technology to very much test overall how the project can be shaped up. And the digitalization, in this case, is used to convince clients. This is an old project of the office in Beijing, and it was used here to convince clients, yes, it is quite a complex shape for an office complex of different buildings altogether, but each one of the glazing panels are exactly the same. There is a high repetition also of the panels of the cladding. They are framing each of the floors. So again, digital as a tools to shape the design, but also to make it more cost-effective. And this is one of the projects that maybe a few of you have visited and others have just looked at it on the news and so on. I think this project in itself embeds the idea of continuity between what is the landscape what is the landscape surrounding it, with the shape of the building, with its interior. None of the lines are ending anywhere. It's like a continuous loop where the visitor is drawn in and is drawn in to experience the space in a continuity of seamless continuity of all of the spaces. Different materiality applied to the different spaces, but the concept stays that there is no floor, there is no wall, there is no ceiling. It's all one loop that goes around the entire building. And this is also something that sometimes we have fun playing in the furniture. It takes still a long time to develop each one of those projects. I personally work on the sofa for B&B Italia, 2 years of working back and forth with the B&B to get the right shape. The idea here is, again, to try to relook at some of the objects within our world that might still, the essence is always a sofa or a table or a chair, but they are relooked with the idea of continuity in between the actual functionality with the form in itself. And parametric design is to resolve a very complex site, like the one that it's a very small block compared to all of the others that are on the line in New York. In our case, the complexity was also to resolve the different height between the two plots or the two sides of the plot. This has actually been transformed into a split building where the facade and the interiors are actually readjusted to compensate the difference in between the two sides. And it can be used for master plan. This is a never-built master plan. It was an exploration that at the time, the entire office, I think, did a sketch for this master plan of an area of Istanbul, Kartalpendik master plan. The idea was not to find a final solution for all, but was actually to utilize parametric tools to bridge across the two sides of the city. So the grid is actually the form to create the plots, and from the plots, different articulation in heights are created. When we talk about the use of parametric tools in complex master plan, this is again an experimentation more than a real project. And we do quite a lot of those things in the practice. The idea here was to how to create identity of the space without repeating the same tower over and over. So you see that there is an articulation that from the small tower to the tallest tower repeat across, but it's not the same. So how unifying a huge part of a master plan by only modifying the top of the building, the way it melts with the ground. So an exercise on familiarity versus diversity within a big master plan. The parametric tools this is the central bank of Iraq, built finally, took quite a few years, you can imagine. So we won this in competition, and Zaha was very happy. As you know, she was from Baghdad originally, and when she won, the central bank was like the entire office again working on this competition. The winning option that I'm showing here show how the actual location has guided throughout the design of the podium and the design of the tower. The little elements that you see, I cannot point on anything, no, but the little plans that you see here are showing how the facade is made of a series of structural lamellas that are allowing for view out without completely screening the quite tough sun that hits the facade. So opening and closing of this structural exoskeleton is actually allowing view out, as well as creating a continuity between form and structure. That is one of the critical items in our design. And this is another very big example, was the first platinum LEED ever achieved in the Saudi when it was open. And the whole concept started with the massing of a flock of courtyard buildings at different scale. Each one of the courtyards or the cells actually has a courtyard in the middle. Those courtyards are designed to capture the predominant wind, And at the same time, the highest part of the cell creates the shading for the cortea to be utilized all year long. And the intelligence of one cell is actually then recalculated when putting together as an aggregation. So the effect of capturing the predominant wind and at the same time screening each other, it's a bit like imagine the penguin in a different climate, the penguin getting together to create some sort of a bigger mass to protect them from the snow and the wind and the cold. So this project is got the high, let's say, BREEAM qualification, not only because it uses, of course, all of the possible technology at the time, but it's because at the initial step of the design, it was meant to be designed this way for its location. And it's similar when you will look at the Unicorn Island. This is in Chengdu. Unicorn is a series of companies. You know what unicorn companies are. They wanted to create some sort of a city or village. So again, parametric tools have been utilized as a wayfinding system, but also as a way of creating a series of family within the blocks in itself, a bit what I was explaining before with the group of towers, that actually create something that is very unified and yet different. Each one of the buildings has quite the unique characteristic responding to whether it's residential, whether are office spaces, whether are recreational. And technology, or the idea of experimenting with, it's not playing, let me see if it's playing like that. Yes, the idea of no, I lost it. Of experimenting with materiality. I don't know if you can do anything to make it, yes, it's starting. To experiment with geometry, materiality, strength of the material is very much looked at in, for example, this specific pavilion. That is a tribute to Candela, of course, is looking at the minimum surfaces as a way of minimizing what is needed as a structure, but at the same time was intended as a way of showcasing rigidity within, starting from a very soft mold. And this idea of looking at what is the content and what would be the shape of the space in itself is very strongly in this, this is the mathematical gallery in the Science Museum in London. One of the main objects was this airplane, and it was the idea of how to show the progress of mathematics when studying aerodynamics. So we did a simulation, digital simulation, of how the wind will move around the wings of the airplane. And those became the, let's say, the initial black and white model for then quite complex in terms of the technicality and the study of the geometry, the panelization for the composition. And the idea is that those floating elements are also a way of rearranging the content of the exhibition. We go then at the scale of a building, how structure and the actual design work specifically for the location. This is one of the tallest atrium in an office building. We're talking about Beijing. The whole idea was not that we wanted to do the tallest atrium ever. We had a problem. This site had a metro line passing right in the middle. And the only way for us to resolve it as one unique building, or one solo building, not unique, but was to actually look at a split core with this internal multi-layered atrium. And then this went all the way to create this beautiful facade that is very repetitive and yet is working around a quite curvilinear facade. Structure as a wayfinding in the station here in, not here, in KSA in Riyadh. Multi-layer station required a solution that can, sorry, just a second. required a solution that could allow for structure and the way people move through the building to work simultaneously. It took quite a few years to build, but the result, if you've ever been in Riyadh recently, is very, very, very spectacular. It brings together people a bit like, for the first time, to have an enjoyable ride, not in your own car. Riyadh is a very car-centric city, but to really enjoy the experience of being in a space that is public. And again, structure that is kind of the guiding force into the design of the building. This is Morpheus, a city of dream in Macau, a project that tested very much the limit of what a steel structure can do to when it's not planar. But the idea here was this is kind of a mixed-use building that was designed after the podium was already completed of all of the other buildings. So we were forced to rethink this as this gigantic amount of rooms and programs all in one form, yet freeing as much as possible the internal space planning. So the idea here is an extruded box where we carve out the mass to create some spectacular spaces within the atrium and the panoramic lift. And the structure is actually connected back through the slab to two central cores. So again, the design of this building, while we were planning for the hotel rooms, or we were designing the super villas or the swimming pool that sits at the top of the building, was always going in parallel in adjusting the structure, the facade, and now the two were speaking together. Finally, the structure that you see outside is very much a big component of what you see as a ceiling, as a wall in the interior spaces. So again, looking at spaces not only from the postcard or the postcard view from far away, but really looking at this structure as a way of designing also the interior spaces. So I didn't know that I had this slide. So this is exactly what I was saying, this connection between in and out, and the trigger to use such a again, quite complex structure was to free up the internal spaces of the building. A lot of parametric tools were utilized, and this is not only within ZHA, but it was for the first time. Now it looks old, but I can tell you that at the time that we were designing this, the idea to have a platform for constant exchange with the structure engineers using other software, with the fabricator for the exoskeleton cladding, was crucial for the workflow of such. And I think it's proven again that we follow our project. Like I always say to the client that we are like the koala that will never leave the tree, and it's true, but the reality is that in this case, it would have never been possible if the client didn't follow our vision for that. But all of the engineers, contractors, and fabricators in Foshan and in China were not up for the challenge. And this shows a little bit how this progress went along. There are images that are coming from us, images that are coming from the fabricator of the exoskeleton. So that wasn't easy to find someone that wanted to take the liability of that. The client went all the way to a shipyard manufacturer. They are, in any case, doing some very big steel double care components to get the exoskeleton for the most complex part, that is the middle part. And this is the fabrication, again, all coming from very one-to-one design pieces in CAD at the time, but then fully then pre-assembled before coming into the space. So it is a craft building using a really sophisticated array of technology. Sometimes the structure is used to organize different programs, like in this building in Zhuhai. Again, looking at all of the history of architecture and structure together, but in this case, those springle shape are both structurally and allow for column-free spaces for auditorium, for ballet theater. It's multifunction spaces. Sometimes the structure is thought as a contrast to the existing building. We were called to do an extension for the Serpentine Pavilion in London for a new bar. It's a very small project where technology were used with this PVC stretched to the minimum surface to create this incredible rich roof. And I call this respectful tension. There is a lot nowadays about retrofitting, reusing, adapt existing building. I think when we were called, this was an open, anonymous competition that we won in Antwerp. And I think one of the key message on this part is that the new office user could, yes, use part of the existing building, but they needed also different ways of actually moving around, creating meeting rooms and so on. So the design looked at, respect the existing fabric. There is only one structure that comes all the way in the courtyard, but yet adding a complete new, this should have been an audio, but fine, a new addition on the top. And this is the head of the office building for the Port Authority, that talks exactly about this, how this new building floating across the space not only is now, a bit of a symbol of the city of Antwerp, but has given the opportunity of working in a different way than the existing building was doing when it was built. The insertion, as I was saying before, can be looked at relinking existing geometry and then weaving them within the space. Again, this is the Maxi Museum. Took almost 12 years to be built. Italy public projects are really quite a different one to get across. And at the beginning, the city was, I think, quite surprised that this building that is part of the neighborhood where the Olympic Games were in the 60s could actually be so successful. There were a lot of the discussion at the time whether a museum should only be a black box or a white box. And this building is not at all. This building works with the idea of walking around, flowing through the building, and the arts and the art curator that subsequently now has been open for at least 12 years, they actually like the idea of being challenged to rethink how their own art pieces can be fitted in this space. And sometimes this is a very interesting way of rethinking how spaces and collaboration in between the architecture and the arts can occur. Everything in this building talks about movement. Everything from the staircase, from the way the skylights are moving around the spaces. Everything is thought to be elegantly reconnecting different parts of the building. And I'll show you another project. This is all very, very new, opened a couple of months ago. This is this building, 16th century, in the city center of Rome. The client, this small developer of hotel, luxury hotel, asked us whether we were interested in giving it a go. And one of the important things to say is that there is a lot of the existing building that is about the geometry of the cupola, of the arches of different shapes. So this is where the inspiration that you will see in the final project comes across, really looking at how the geometry of the roof, of the structural components of the arches and soffit were actually created work and play with it in different spaces. So sometimes in the corridor they become some filigrane or very light metal meshes that are guiding you through the entrance. In other spaces they become a lighting feature to double up on the existing one, yet transforming the geometry. In other cases, like this is the reception area, they become bronze elements that are actually still reinterpreting the idea of the arches, of the soffit, but yet with a completely fluid language. Again, it's interesting how different materials, different functions, different way of also integrating other elements like lighting, like how the seats are around. This is a Michelin star restaurant. Even the gym has the same geometry, yet is taught in this case in wood. And we come to the common spaces like the spa that is all reorganized around Rome. You can never not find something Roman, so there were some remains from the Roman time, so the whole courtyard got reshaped to actually incorporate the experience of looking into it. And then you come to the rooms, and some of the rooms were remodeled with trying to create this elegant commission between all the new, so the frescoes or the soffit, but then all the modern, let's say, touches of the design with the finishes. I mean, I would have changed it. This is a bit too glossy for me, but fine. This is my comment. But essentially, all of this is actually then made into all unique rooms, each one of them responding to what the actual container will look like. So this is us. As I was saying right at the beginning, what brings us together as a group is that we are still very curious. We critique each other a lot. I mean, we are in a positive competition all the time in the practice. Sometimes we do it on purpose. If it's an important competition, we put two separate teams and we put them to compete with each other, but not because one has to win and one has to lose, because we want to see how many ideas can decide the brief, the client that can bring together. But this is also very backed up by a lot of analytics that we create within our practice. And some of the software that we co-own in a way that we develop sometimes with people like AutoCAD or Rhino and so on, they are actually the one that are enabling us to make some important conscious and data-driven solution for the site. So sometimes it's like, this is the example of BIHA, it's really around the corner from here, but unfortunately it's a very private office. The brief was to create something that was net zero, and we are strong believers that unless you get the form right at the beginning, there is no way that you can patchwork plant spaces and PV panels on the top. So each one of the spaces is carefully designed to allow natural light to float into the office and never have direct sun within the space. The space in itself, it derives its inspiration from the dunes, very fluid language, but it's again curated as a way of, I see the maxi, whether the geometry is not exactly the same, but I see the maxi over and over in some of our projects. Again, the idea of creating spaces for collaboration that are meant to be navigated in a seamless way. Sometimes the sustainability comes in the decision for the first time to use timber, laminated timber for a stadium. This project is for an eco football club in the UK. It's getting a little bit of time to get the planning approval, but I hope one day I will show you fully completed. Other time we are called in to relook at an existing building. Monaco, really expensive client. They asked us to completely redesign this building in terms of their carbon impact, and also relook at how it connects at the ground and on the sky. So adaptive reuse that looks at a very strong collaboration with all of the mechanical that were implemented. Sometimes we offer, software that are allowing for custom configuration. This is an experimental, you would imagine, project that the client commissioned to us, where the idea was to create a village out of a series of components that the different client could decide. And it wasn't only to do with, I want 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom apartment. It was about creating spaces that actually are customized, more external space, smaller kitchen, and so on, out of a fixed number of components. And this is like a result of one of the configurations that we study for the client. And again, when we look at the analytic and inside, I mean, this is an example of a building that we have done in China again. The idea was to demonstrate to the client, but also to ourselves. First, we have to demonstrate to ourselves that the position of the core versus the floor plate was actually doing what we were selling as an idea of a new gigantic workspace. So we looked at it analytically from a visibility, natural ventilation, daylight analytics, again, to create design that are not only respecting the GFA required by the client, but really delivering in what is, in terms of BAFE, required, again, from the clients. Those are some of the interiors. The same analytic can be used to make early decision about the core position, so quickly have arrays and arrays of solution. Any of the one that you see are not the final one. We are not expecting the computer or the AI to solve our problems or the client problems, but they are giving you the ability of looking at different configuration very quickly and make an overall decision. So again, the idea of the analytics not as the one that will take over our job, but more like the informed decision process. And this is where, for example, again, integration of structure and the apartment layout come together. So each one, when you see the exoskeleton moving in and out, that's where there is a change of the apartment layout within the spaces. So from 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom to the penthouses on the top. And it goes through, I mean, we do those pavilions. They're usually money losers, but they are very much ways of experimenting on new technology, in new materials, that they are part of then our baggage when we look at the bigger projects overall. So this is it. There is an informed innovation throughout what we do. It can go at the scale of our robotic arm that sits in the office in London, to the experimentation in Morpheus, to the experimentation with material. And I hope we can keep experimenting more. I have another 20 slides, but I think this one is a nice one to close. Thank you very much.